Hey, thanks for stopping by. You're going to enjoy this show. Today, it's going to be an inspiring story from my friend, Kelly Falardeau, a woman who takes life's lemons, who has taken life's lemons and turned it into lemonade of success. And you're going to hear about her story. She's a burn victim at the age of 2. 75% of her body was burned. And she has dealt with a life of bullying and shame and put downs and pick-ons and you name it. I could only imagine what this beautiful soul must have went through all these years. But what you're going to see today and what you're going to learn today is how through perseverance and through grit, guts, and courage, you can really stare adversity right in the face and you can actually find your way to opportunities and success. And you're going to learn strategies on how to do just that. So like the video, share it with your friends, make sure to hit the notification that you can always hear when we drop another YouTube drop. So thanks, enjoy the show.
So my mom was 21, pregnant with my sister at the time, and we lived on a farm. And my cousins were there. They were 9 and 11, and they were throwing shingles in the fire because our grandpa had asked them to burn the shingles from the old barn row. So they were throwing shingles in the fire, and I, of course, wanted to be outside with my cousins. So my mom had to think about, should I keep her inside and change her diaper, or should I let her go outside and be with her cousin? And so my mom let me go outside. And a few minutes later, she could hear some crying and some screaming. And she looked out the window to find me engulfed in flames.
Wow.
And at that point, she knew that she had made the wrong decision, that she should have kept me inside to change my diaper. And so she goes running out, the neighbor's there and they're pouring water on me. And, my mom ripped off my dress, wrapped me in a blanket, and then rushed me to the hospital. And I had a 50-50 chance of living.
Wow.
And in fact, just probably about 6-7 years ago, I met my anesthetist who was in the operating room. And she was telling me they did not expect me to live. I was not supposed to live. I was burnt to 75% of my body at 2 years old, and they thought there was no way that I was going to live, but I did. And so that's why I really believe that there has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason why. A 2-year-old in 1968, they don't have the same kind of medical technology back then that they have now. So yeah, there had to be a reason.
So that's just devastating, right? It must have been devastating for your mom. The fact that you lived through that, was it still potentially, even after, say, the first couple of weeks, was it still potentially that you would not make it? Was it a long,
yeah,
that you could potentially at any moment pass away?
Yeah, absolutely. So for 4 months, I was in the hospital. Every 2 days, I would be in the operating room. And my mom was telling me about, she found in my medical chart, because she was snooping in my chart, and it said 911 or something like that. And so she asked the nurse, what does this mean? Because my mom knows that when they say that code over the hospital intercom, that means that there's a code. That means that someone on that station is dying, and whoever is involved with that station needs to rush there because the person's going to die. And so the nurses said, oh, we just put that in there just in case. And so yeah. And then even when I was about 8 years old, I had to go back for more surgery, because every 2 years until I was 20 years old, I would go for surgery. And one day we got to see my doctor, and he's 90 years old. And this was, I think, about 4 years ago when I got to see my doctor again. And he had no idea where I was. He hadn't seen me since I was 20, and I'm 57 now. So that was about when I was about 52, 53. Anyways, he was telling my mom and my doctor about another time when what was happened is my tube fell out of my tracheotomy fell out. And so in the operating room, the doctor or the anesthetist was saying to my Dr. Simizu, that he might have to slice open my neck to get the tube back in. And sure enough, that had happened. He goes, slice it open, because they had to get the tube back in. And I was already, almost dead at that point. They could see the coloring on me that I was.
20?
No, I was about 8 years old when that happened.
That was at 8.
Yeah. Yeah. So
well, there's a lot of lessons that can come out of how you approached your everyday life, your new life. Well, you really know nothing different, at 2 years old, right? Like, so now you're going to school. When did you start to realize that people were mean?
I don't even think it was when I was in school. I think it was maybe even when I was younger. But, I remember, going to school, and I remember, people staring at me and kids staring at me and teasing me. I remember in grade 5, I walked past my teacher's desk and I saw a picture that someone had drawn of me, and it was a circle, and it had, eyes, nose, and mouth on it and scribbles all over it, and it said Scarface. And I knew then that, yeah, the kids are calling me the Scarface girl. And I was devastated because, I just wanted my scarf to go away. I just wanted to be beautiful, like all the other girls, and, Snow White and Cinderella and, all of the Disney movies with the beautiful princess. And you watch all those movies and you wonder, like, am I ever going to get to be that little girl who, finds her Prince Charming that's going to love me and kiss me and take care of me, right? I just felt I would never, ever get married or have kids because I thought, who's going to want to marry the ugly girl? So I used to pray to God when I was 15, and I would say, dear God, please don't make me wake up in the morning. But if I have to, can I at least be scarless so I can be pretty like all the other girls? Thank you. Amen. And of course, then I'd wake up in the morning, and of course, the scars were still there. And I thought, my doctor can't take my scars away because he's been trying every 2 years, and then God not taking my scars away. So am I going to be the ugly girl forever? And that was when I thought, I'll never be loved. Who's going to love somebody with ugly scars like me? So,
wow. When did you start to shift the mindset? I mean, that to me could bring on suicidal tendencies and thoughts and deep depression, I'm sure, right? Did you experience all of that?
I don't think I ever got deep depressed. I think, I maybe had a little bit of sadness. I may have had a little bit of depression, but I think I was always trying to dream of what my future would be, and I would try to fight those demons, those demons that say nobody's going to love you. And then I would still try and have those dreams and fantasies that someone might love me. Like maybe this is going to be my life and maybe I could find somebody. So
how old were you when you started to shift the mindset? When you actually just started to accept and try to turn it into a completely different mindset and direction?
Yeah, you know what? It was 19 when I met the man who became my husband. And so I think it was just then. And I remember him saying to me that he loved me, and, he was holding my hand, and it was the first time that a man had ever held my hand. And I was like, oh, this is different, right? So I think it was then, but I think I still wasn't really quite sure that he was the one or that he really loved me. I remember saying to him, why would you love me? Like, why wouldn't you want a girl that has nipples, right? Like, I've got one little tiny partial nipple and the other breast has none. And I'm like, you could have a woman that has nipples, right? But that never seemed to bother him. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was a progressive thing. It wasn't something that there was a switch. Although when I was in my 40s, after I had a daughter, and then I was so excited about having a daughter first because I thought maybe then I'll know what I look like without scars. And then I had a second baby, and I lost her at 28 weeks. In fact, her birthday was just on Monday. She would have been 22 years old. And then I had a set of twin boys. And so it was after I had the twins that I remember looking in the mirror, and I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm done feeling like the ugly girl. And I went in the mirror, and normally I was told, if you go in the mirror and say to yourself how beautiful you are, eventually you'll just believe it. And that never worked for me, because every time I said, I am beautiful, that little voice in my head would say, no, you're not. You're full of scars. Beautiful girls don't have scars. You have to be flawless. In order to be beautiful. And I was like, okay, how am I going to change this? And so I went into the mirror this time. I made sure nobody was home. I locked the bathroom door. And this time I went in the mirror and I said to myself, I love my big, beautiful green eyes. And I didn't hear that voice. And I was like, but it's true. I believe it. I believe I have big, beautiful green eyes. Then I looked at my nose and I said, oh my God, I love my cute little nose. And then that little voice didn't say anything again, right? Because I believe it. I love my cute little nose. And then I looked in the mirror again, and this time I looked at my little ear, and it's a deformed ear. It's not pretty. It's ugly. Some people might think it's ugly. And I thought, oh my God, I love my cute little ear. It makes me special. It makes me different. It makes me unique. And then again, this time I was wearing my favorite jeans. So I turned around, I looked at my ass, and I said, oh my God, I love my cute little hot ass. And and again, I wasn't bragging about myself. I was learning to embrace myself. So instead of going in the mirror and saying, I am beautiful, I went in the mirror and I learned how to love all my little parts. And then what happened is that the next time I went in the mirror, I didn't see my ugly scars. The scars blended in, and I started to see my soul, my heart. I started to see everything that was beautiful about me. And that was one of the first steps that I took to really learn to love, who I am and what I look like.
How old were you at that moment?
No, I was in my 40s when that happened.
I took you to your 40s. So take me from 20 to 40. Now you're getting into a career, or now you're starting to set yourself into adult life. How were things then?
Well, I am a real go-getter. So I'm the kind of person that has to be doing a lot of stuff. I can't just, have one job and that's it. So my 20s to my 40s was all about, trying different jobs, having different businesses. Like we had a balloon decorating business at one point. We had a bathtub reglazing business. And so it was all about figuring out being an entrepreneur, plus also having a job and just doing all kinds of things. I had a mobile scrapbook store. So my husband built me this big cube van, and it was a store inside. And I would go around and I would sell scrapbooking supplies and teach people how to scrapbook. And but it was a big money pit. It was bankrupting us. It wasn't making enough money. I think I was ahead of my time, and it was here in Canada. And I think that it just wasn't. It wasn't the right place or the right location for it. If I would have been in the US, I think we would have done very well with it. But anyways, it was failing. And then I wanted to also have kids. Like I was 32 when I had my daughter. Then I lost my baby 2 years after that, and then had my twin boys 2 years after that. So it was a lot of changes. So yeah.
A lot of changes, but you were hustling. You were absolutely hustling, and so now you speak on stage. You've done a TED Talk. You coach people. You coach people through your story, through the grit, guts, and courage. So bring us to current. Like what's going on for you now, and how in the heck did you do
it? So let's go back to when I was 44. So when I was 44, that was when it was our 24th year together, me and my husband. And I remember it was our anniversary. He was mad at me because I didn't even buy him a card. I didn't want to celebrate our anniversary. I was done with the marriage. And I remember, hearing him snore, and I thought, okay, good. I can go to bed. But anyways, I went to the bathroom and I just did the ugly cry. And I'm just crying in the bathroom, and I hear that little voice in my head say to me again, said, you're only 44 and you've done 24 years like this. Can you do another 24 years? And I said, no way, help me. And that was the start of when I realized that it was time to end my marriage. It was toxic. It wasn't good. And I didn't see it as a good marriage at all. And I didn't want to live that way. And I remember my boss saying to me how excited she was to go home to see her husband. And I was like, what is that like? Like, I don't want to go home to see my husband. I didn't want to. And what had happened is my husband had also been laid off from his job. And he told me, it's time for you to step up to the plate. And at that time, the twins were just 4 years old. And so they were just, going to start school. I was a stay-at-home mom. Plus I had my scrapbooking business. And he said, okay, it's time for you to get a job and step up to the plate. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. So I had a job in about 3 days. And I was working downtown, and he was off work for about 9 months, had no job interviews, nothing. He was just sitting at home doing nothing. And I was not happy about that, but I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to do this thing. And so then what happened is...
Now, real quick, sorry to interrupt. That turns out to end up being a gift for you that plays out. Think about it.
It did end up being a gift for me. And so I go to this women's event, and I meet a lady named Charmaine. And Charmaine says to me, Kelly, you need to sell that business you're in and be a speaker. And I was like, what? I said, I'm a burn survivor. So what? And she's like, no, people will be so inspired by your story. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I'm in a toxic marriage. I'm in a dead-end job. We're almost bankrupt. I have no idea how you see me as an inspiration, because I see myself as a loser. And I'm 44 years old at this time. And I'm thinking, there's no way that I am an inspiration. I'm a loser. And she's like, no, you need to sell that business and be a speaker. And so she found a way to keep on me. And she found a stage for her and I to be on. And she was Ellen. I was the guest, and we did this Ellen show, and people were laughing at my story. They were crying. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, I had no idea that I could impact people. So I went home that night and I said to my husband, I'm going to be a speaker. And he said, how are you going to do that? And who's going to listen to you? And I was like, oh, right? Like, I'm just like,
another burn.
Yep. And I'm just like, I don't know, but it's going to happen. And sure enough, that I wrote my first book, and then sold my scrapbooking business and gave him his half of the money. I got my half of the money. And then I moved in with my aunt and uncle in the basement. And that was the start of me being a single mom. And then I still remember I went into work because I also had a job at that time. I was starting to do a little bit of speaking. I had written my first book. Plus I had a job. And so my boss calls me in for my performance review. And it's the worst performance review I've ever had in my life. And she asked me this question. She said, Kel, are you going to be excited to come to work on Monday, or relieved if you don't have to? And I was like, oh, darn it. That was another one of those questions that just hit me right to my core, because I knew the answer. The answer was I would be relieved if I didn't have to go to work. But I said, oh my God, like, I just left my marriage 5 months ago. I'm living in my aunt and uncle's basement. I'm 44 years old. I should be way further ahead than I am now. And now you're going to make me quit my job. So now I'm going to have no income, no husband, no nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I heard that little voice again. Are you going to be excited to come to work on Monday, or relieved if you don't have to? And it was like, I went into work the next day and I said, you're right. Today's my last day. And I packed up my office and I went home. And that was the start of me being a speaker for the rest of my life. So that's been 13 years now.
Wow. Congratulations.
So business today is, of course, we all got affected by COVID, right? Pandemic come. I lose all my speaking gigs. And before that, like, I had a documentary about my life story called Still Beautiful. Goalcast did that video about my story. I've got the Woman of Distinction Award and the medal, and all these incredible things happened to me when I let go of my marriage, let go of my job, and just stepped into my power.
Okay, there's a lesson. there's a lesson right there. Let's go ahead and put the headlights on this lesson. So all the good things started happening to you when you finally came to grips with what you needed to shed, what you needed to get rid of, right? And then step into the power. Tell us more of that.
Yeah. So that's the thing, stepping into that power. And when my boss gave me that ultimatum and said, are you going to be excited to come to work or relieved if you don't have to? I also opened up this Christian businesswoman's magazine, and every second page, when I would flip it open, it would say, follow your passion full time, follow your passion full time. And I came into the middle of the book or a magazine, and in big black letters, it said, why do you not trust that God will provide you everything you need? And I slammed that magazine shut because I knew that was what I was scared of. I was scared of what, like, I have no husband, I have no money, like I have nothing. Like, how do I give up my job to have nothing? And then again, it's like, why do you not trust God to provide you everything you need? And that was when I realized that I had to trust myself. I had to trust God. I had to trust the higher power. And I remember how I relate this is the mother bird kicked the baby bird out of the nest, and the baby bird never falls right to the ground. The baby bird might fall down a little, but she flies higher than ever. So anyways, back to your question about what I'm doing now. The pandemic happened. I lost all my speaking gigs. And I thought, okay, what's next? I have 3 teenagers in my house full time. How am I going to afford to look after them? And I laid on the couch for a whole week doing nothing. Now, if you know me, that's a hard thing for me to do. I don't do nothing. I have to be doing things all the time. So anyways, I said to myself, what are you going to do? And I said, I guess I'm going to do this book thing. People were asking me to coach them to write their books and publish them. And so I just started putting on courses and I started coaching people. And then I've helped over 500 people become best-selling authors. And that's what I've been doing. And so that's COVID has actually been a great thing for me because I've helped so many people become best-selling authors, and financially it's been better than ever. It's something I never thought I would do. I hated the word coach. I didn't want to be a coach, but I got led down that path. And it's been great. And now I want to go back to my roots. And that's when I decided I would start up a new brand called Grit, Guts, and Courage, because I didn't want just the Still Beautiful message because it was so targeted just for women. So many people were telling me, Kel, like everybody, like men also need to know how to be an overcomer. And so that's when I thought, well, actually what happened is some of my coaching clients, I decided to put a book together with them. And so it was actually my clients. I said, why don't we call the book Grit, Guts, and Courage? And I said, yeah, that's it. And so the more I talk to people, they're like, oh my God, I love it. So I have a podcast called Grit, Guts, and Courage. I have a keynote presentation. And now we have a book that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So yeah.
I can't wait to get a copy of it.
Yeah, can't wait to have it. Yeah, get it in your hands for sure. So that's what I've been working on. And then
some more lessons that you would say that are principles that, because they rewarded you, these principles that you stand by now rewarded you. What are those principles that you just, that you can help teach today?
Oh boy, that's a great question, Damien. I think one of the biggest principles is just to never give up. If you've got a passion for something, just do it. Another question or another principle that I live by is that a lot of people say, I can't do that. And for me, it's like, if you say, I can't do that, what happens is that your brain then says, oh, you're right, we can't do that. But if you say to yourself, how can I do that? You don't need to know the answer right away. But what you do is when you say, how can I do that? Then you open up your brain to think about it. And you're giving your brain the permission to say, let's think about this. How can we do this? And, I remember like being a single mom, struggling, to make it. I mean, there was many times when I struggled with bad mom syndrome. I was traveling so much and, feeling bad because I had, my three little kids. And, I still remember, like, I just thought I was being such a bad mom by not being home. And I remember my sister saying to me, you know what, Kelly, you have to put your kids first. And I was like, are you kidding me? I have to put that $3,500 speaking gig first, because that $3,500 was going to pay my bills for the month. So, it was easy for her to say that because she had a man who was a multimillionaire to support her. I didn't. So I needed to put the money first, not my kids. And so I had a lot of guilt feelings about that. It wasn't, so anyway, so that was really difficult for me, is to always put the money first, not my kids.
Well, and that is contrary to what people think, right? It's kind of like, it's like the opposite of maybe what they even expect to hear. But think about it. A single mom that literally has to make all the ends meet for multiple kids. And it's unfortunate for some single moms out there that can't spend all that time with the kids because they have to. There is no other person contributing to the household. Mom and dad aren't kicking down money. We're a damn adult, right? And so the whole thought about having to first of all, come to terms with putting money first so that the kids can grow up and have their means met and be able to go to school and be able to become flourishing adults. You had to put money first. And everybody always says, put your kids first, put your family first. Yeah, if you have that luxury, but, having to come to grips with putting money first, that's survival, Kelly, straight up, it's survival. I think many of us can relate to moments in our life where it was survival, yeah. Wow. What a different perspective. I had to put the money first, and unapologetically, like, I felt bad about it, but it's what I had to do to make things work, and they worked out. So how do you address and tackle fear? This is something very common in our community, fear. How do you approach and address fear?
Fear. Okay. So of course I had tremendous fear about leaving my husband. And my husband said I could only leave him if I gave him the house and the kids. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? Because of course, a woman is never supposed to leave her kids. And I didn't want the house because, of course, I couldn't afford it. The kids, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was like, even just thinking about it now, it just, brings those feelings back. And I said, okay. And the reason I said okay was because I knew I was still going to see my kids every day, right? Like the way the way we arranged things, I still saw them every day. So, but fear, I read a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways by Susan Jeffers. Okay. And that book is just awesome. And in the first 20 pages, I finally realized what it was. Why was I so scared to leave my husband? Because I didn't know what was on the other side. My whole adult life, I was with the same man. So I couldn't imagine that I could live without him. And so how we handle fear is by thinking that, hey, maybe life will be better on the other side. Like if I hadn't have left my husband and if my boyfriend hadn't have left his wife of 30 years, we never would have been together. And we have this incredible relationship. So who are you to say that I should have stayed in that toxic marriage? Right? There's so many people that stay in toxic marriages or dead-end jobs because they think that's their only option. And it's not your only option. And so I remember when there was many times when I was scared shitless because, I had all these bills to pay and my kids, and here I am an entrepreneur, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I would, instead of saying, I can't do that, I would say, what else can I do? And I still remember my best friend telling me, Kel, I see you being a painter and you're going to make thousands of dollars. And I said, you know what? You're full of shit. I am not a painter. She's like, Kel, like you go paint. And anyways, so I found this video and I learned to paint. And next thing you know, I made $1,000 in 1 week just selling paintings. So you don't have to make your only money just in your job or just in your entrepreneurial, your business. You can make money wherever. Like there was times when I went back to work as a dishwasher at a catering company, but because that was the only thing I could get right away to make immediate money. So I hated it, but I did it because I knew I had to feed my kids, and I knew that I had to do that during the slow times when I had no speaking gigs. So I always said to myself, what else can I do? And that is when my brain then kicks in and says, well, okay, you can do some painting, you can do some coaching, you could write another book, you could, work your ass off and find some more speaking gigs. You can go do whatever you need to do.
Welcome to the side hustle, the world of side hustle, huh?
Absolutely. The side hustle. And so that's what I would do. It didn't matter. I would do whatever it took.
So let's go a little deeper on fear, because one thing that I know to be true is the thought of just getting up on a stage in front of even 20 people is terrifying to the majority of the human population. We know that, right? And so, so what I really like, okay, so now you're going to be speaking for the first time. Granted, the first time you went up, you had a co-pilot, which probably made it a lot easier, but your knees had to be knocking. Your legs were trembling. I know the feeling. I've been there, when I first started that whole speaking thing. And, admittedly, like if I go up on a stage right now with 1,000 people, my knees are going to knock, my legs are going to tremble. How did you tackle fear of getting up on stage and getting your message out?
I'm trying to see if I still have it. Usually I have it somewhere. You know what? I basically had to do a lot of self-talk, and I had to say to myself, this is actually one of my coaches said to me, you need to say to yourself, I am the only one who knows my story. Nobody knows my story better than me. And what I would do is I would always plan my opening and plan my closing. And then I just trusted that whatever else was meant to come out would come out. So I always speak from my heart. I don't script a speech. I never do. I just basically, like I said, plan my opening and my closing, and then I let my heart do the rest. And that made it so much easier. And I just had to, talk to myself about, they want me here because I have this story. And you never know who your story is going to touch. And that's why it's all about just do it anyways. And if you need to get coaching, right? And so then I would also hire coaches to help me with it and learn how to be a storyteller. That to me is the biggest thing, is being a storyteller. Learn how to tell a story, because people want the storytellers. They don't want the preachers. Okay. And what I mean by a preacher is someone that just says, do this, do this, do this, do this, and this result will happen. Tell the story. Tell the story about fear. So for example, my son, he has a fear of heights. And we were going skydiving as a family to do some filming for my documentary. And he said, Mom, nope, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm scared of heights, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, fine. So what happened is my cousin told him what it was going to be like. So we educated him. He said, yeah, you're going to be scared. But once you jump out, that'll be the scariest part. But once you're like actually in the air, it'll be fine and you'll love it and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, so he decides he's going to do it. So we have the family plane. So my cousin goes, Cody goes, Parker, who's scared of heights, he jumps, my daughter jumps, and then I jump. And then we all land. And my son Parker comes running up to me. He goes, Mom, Mom, Mom. And I'm like, what? He goes, that was amazing. When can I do it again? Exactly. And I said, do you get the lesson? He goes, what's the lesson? If you never would have done it, you never would have known you love it. If you would have let fear hold you back, you never would have known how much you love skydiving. And so if I was just to say to people, go and skydive, you'll get over your fear of heights, Or if I tell you the story of Parker, which story is going to get you more engaged? Which story is going to encourage you to get over your fear?
Yeah, Parker, for sure. I can relate. You know, it's that moment when you're all at the river with all your friends and you're up high because everybody went up to the big cliff to jump, and you sit up there and you think and you think and you think and you're scared and you're terrified. The minute you jump, you can't wait to go jump again. I mean, a lot of us can relate, not necessarily the jumping thing, but just doing it anyway, and then realizing it wasn't the monster that was going to eat you. Right?
Yeah,
So let me tell you why that's so on point for our audience. So our audience is, I'll remind you, and they are digital marketing agencies. They call on businesses and they sell marketing services, mobile applications, social media services and strategies, right? And I would love for many of them to go the route of the one-to-many. I think it's fantastic to go into a restaurant and sell a mobile application for $3,000 to $5,000 and make a lot of money. That's fantastic. But I also love the idea of getting up in front of 100 of them all in a room and walking off with $20,000 in sales or $40,000 in sales because you sold 20 transactions. And so the one-to-many, although very small percentage, are willing to just get over the fear and try it. And I would also say that it doesn't have to be 200 people or 1,000 people. It could even be a room of 20 business owners or 10 business owners. Yet last week's happy hour guest, you know, it's our mutual friend, Tony Kaufman, and she shared the one-to-many strategy in a lot of ways to kind of get over that fear as well. And, you know, I think this is right on point for our folks that are here today, because just do it anyway. And you'll realize that the 15 people in attendance, you did it anyway. You were scared hoopless to do it. You did it. And you left with a few sales, and then you realize, just like Parker did, hey, I can do that again. Like, I want to do that again. That was awesome. And then I will be honest, after my first day on stage, the butterflies never go away. I'll just be honest with you on that. But I'll tell you what, after that first day, it was so much easier, right? The second at bat was so much easier. Look, familiar. I've been here before. The last time I left with a great result. You know, I had people interested. Even if you don't make a sale in your first attempt, just the fact that you did it anyway is a huge win. And so I hope you get that message from Kelly today. If you're thinking about speaking to an association group or a chamber of commerce group or a BNI networking group or anything that'll get you more opportunity, just do it anyway, and do it Parker's way. Kelly, I want to thank you for sharing your inspiring story. There were a lot of lessons out of your story. You know, there were speaking lessons. There were stories of grit, guts, and courage. That's what it was about today, and it was very inspiring. And for those that are watching this replay on YouTube, if you enjoyed this, please share it. Let's get Kelly's word out there, and like and subscribe to this channel.